But I want to begin by sharing some things with the annual conference. I want to just share just some comments on the bishop's address this year. And I want to use that to begin with this morning. Every year the bishop usually has an address that he gives to the conference, and usually talks about things that happened in the past year. But more importantly, he looks forward to what he expects or anticipates or desires in the coming year or years. And one nice thing with our bishop, he always never ceases to amaze me. Every year it seems like he just gets better in what he has to say in his presentation. And some years when we've had the bishop's address, I sit there in my chair just wondering, I have to go through this for 45, 50 minutes. And not sure how that's going to go. But with this bishop, it always seems to go well. But this year was really interesting. And especially the way that he started it off. Because it really got me thinking, especially in terms of the line of thought that he was presenting. And I was kind of listening to what he was saying, but I was also in my own thoughts. I usually don't multitask very well, but my mind was really doing it that day. But the bishop started off in his address, and he was talking about cars that his family had owned as he was growing up. And right away, that kind of made a connection, because as he was talking about that, I was just sitting there thinking about the cars that we had in our family as I was growing up. And I remember some of those cars. I remember the first one that really had an impression on me was a 1960 Pontiac Bonneville that my parents had purchased. 1960 Bonneville. Now, to a youngster of about 10 years of age, this car was huge. This was a big car, if you know what I'm talking about. And I can remember the first time my dad opened the hood to that car. I mean, this thing was like wall-to-wall engine. Had something like 389 cubic inches, over 300 horsepower. Wow, this thing had power to spare. I thought this was the greatest car in the world. It was roomy and it's huge engine, and had the power to do what you want to do. I thought that was one of the greatest cars until 1964. 1964, that was the first year of the Pontiac GTO. Remember the GTO? Yeah, I see some heads going. Yeah, the Pontiac GTO, that was a car, wasn't it? That was a car. That one kind of went to the head of the class right off the bat, What a car that was. Every teenager's dream, I think, was to have a Pontiac GTO. What a car that was. And so it was in 1968. My parents went out and purchased a Pontiac Catalina. Hey, that was a good car too. We liked that car. That was a good family car for us, and I remember that one. We took a lot of trips on it and everything like that. But in the process, a short time after that, my dad also ended up getting a Mercury Comet. Remember that Mercury Comet? That's a few years ago too, isn't it? I think he got that so I could have something to learn on a little bit that he could use for a work car, and that's really did serve his purpose. But those cars especially, I just kind of remember because it was a period of time as I was young and growing up, and really in some ways before I was really driving. But I remember those cars, and I'm sure that all of us can pause and just remember some of the cars that our family had owned as we were growing up. But there's one thing about cars that we own in our family. There's one thing about those today. They're discontinued. They are no more. The Pontiac, the Comet, they are cars that passed. Even the Pontiac, they're not building those anymore. The Comets, of course, they've been out for a while. But the interesting thing is that over the years, car models change, but people still buy cars. Now, they may not be buying them as much as they were in the past, and there are some reasons for that. And one of the things that we've seen happening over the years is that the major auto industry and the auto corporations, through a series of events that have happened over the last year or so, through bankruptcy, through the process of discontinued models, these auto companies are rethinking cars. They're rethinking cars. And as I thought about that, it's really interesting because this week, I saw two ads on television. One was by Charles Schwab ad. And there's a man on there talking about finances. And one of the statements he made, and I really picked up on it, right at the beginning of the commercial, he says, I've started to rethink money. I've started to rethink money. And then I saw another ad. And this one had a big bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken on the screen. And next to it said, rethinking KFC. You know, rethinking KFC. It seems there's a lot of rethinking going on out there in the world around us. There's a lot of rethinking happening. And yet, as I think about that, what about the church? What about the church? Because I think in some ways, and in the same way, the church has to adapt to a changing world, or the world is going to pass the church by. When we really stop to consider, where's the church fit into all this? Because I don't think it's only the auto industries or Charles Schwab or KFC that needs to begin to rethink what the church is about and what the church is. You know, for example, we talk about, we need to attract young people and youth. We better understand where the young people and youth are coming from. Because you see, to many young people and youth today, they don't have an understanding of the church. When they look at the church in many ways, the church to them is an institution that's concerned more about its own membership than it is about community. But we need to have an awareness of that. That's why it's important for us to engage our community. As a church, we need to engage our community. It's important for us to discover the needs of people in our community and examine ways in which we can reach those needs. We need to rethink the church. And we need to do these things for the right reasons. We really think about it. The right reasons. We have a message. We have a message to share in the church. That message is the good news of Jesus Christ, and it's a message that doesn't change. The content of that message is the same, but it's more a matter of how do we rethink that message and getting it out to others. It's a matter of rethinking how we get that message out. Rethinking the church. What if? What if is a good question for us to ask as Christians and as a church. What if, in the church, what if we thought less about Sunday and more about Monday through Saturday? What if? What if the church wasn't just a place to go, but something that we do? What if? What if the church was an active verb and not a noun? What if? What if we looked at the church not through our eyes, but others outside of our doors? What if the church wasn't just a building, but it was an open door to different experiences of church that brings meaning and has an impact on people's lives? What if the church was offering real solutions to everyday life? What if? What if? I think that's an important question. And the interesting thing is, this isn't new. This isn't new. Go back about 2,000 years ago. Look at Jesus' ministry. And I was thinking about this and I thought, this isn't a new idea because this is no different than what Jesus did. It really isn't. Look at scriptures. Look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, these Gospels about this life story of this Jesus. And we see his work in presenting his message and building the church. Not surrounded so much by his activity of sitting in the synagogue in that temple for worship. We see little of him on the Sabbath. You don't see a lot of Jesus in the scriptures on the Sabbath and what he's doing, but much of his ministry and much of what he was doing really comes to us the other days of the week.